Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Women in Business show today. I am your host, Maria Froese, and I have a fantastic guest lined up for you today, my friend, Karina Bueckert. Karina, how are you doing today?
Hello. I'm well. How are you?
Awesome. I am very good. Thank you for
Awesome.
sure. I've had 2 cups of coffee, so we're good to go.
You're ready to fly. You're ready to fly.
You got it. I just want to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Anada, for sponsoring this episode. I'm very thankful for them and their products, which I just got some amazing bath bombs. So you guys know, that's on my Instagram stories if you need to see bath bombs. So there we go. They're fantastic. But anyway, side note, Karina, how are you today? You tell me a little bit about yourself. We're going to have a great chat today.
I am well. Working from home, staying in the warmth. Life is good. Good.
Excellent. Yep. That is good. You're working from home now. So that is kind of an interesting turn all in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, for years and years, I've always struggled with boundaries within work, life, whatever. There's no such thing as boundaries, I don't think, in my world. Anyway, so I've always struggled with it. I've always looked at it negatively. And then when this pandemic hit, I saw the positives of it. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do my job from home. I'm very fortunate that way.
Yes, absolutely. And you saying that, you struggle with boundaries, I'm the same way. So we've talked about on Women in Business, how some people have certain set schedules and things like that. And I'm one of those people who I have rhythms. So I will flow off of rhythms better, but a set schedule, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do, exactly things, but certain things you have to do on a certain timeline and the rest you can just wing. So
totally. And I think that's a part of being a mom too, you have to multitask. You don't get to be like, this is what I'm doing now. I don't know.
Kids, I am doing dishes. You guys are going to have to.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, that doesn't work that way. So it's otherwise they're scratching your leg and climbing or getting stuff from the pantry.
Totally.
It doesn't work that way, right? So tell me a little bit about yourself personally, Karina. Tell me what you like to do. Tell me what things are, who's Karina?
Who's Karina? I don't know that either. I think I'm learning that as we go here. As in my 30s, I think I'm figuring that one out a little bit more and more, right? As you get older, you find that. I am 38. Okay. 38, loving getting older. Yes. I never want to go younger again. Some people are like, oh, I wish I could do my 20s again. Why? I don't even remember my 20s. I don't ever need to do that disaster ever again.
Right. I'm here for this. I am so here for this. Totally.
I'm a wife, mom. I have 2 kids, teenagers. My son turns 18 in a month, and it's just mind blowing to me. But anyways, I work for Innkeepers, which is an umbrella company. So we have 6 hotels that I do all the sales and marketing for. Okay. And then I'm also a city councilor. And so I sit on 13 committees, I think it is right now. Anyways, so I sit on a bunch of committees and it's awesome.
So you are a busy lady for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I can see that.
Thrive in it.
And thrive in it. That's awesome. Yep. That's very good. I know, as I always say to people too, that the older I get, the more I love being older. So right? I 100% agree with that.
Totally. Look at these grays, yo. I'm earning it. I am earning it.
Exactly. I told people I was so scared of my 30th birthday. I was like, it was my favorite birthday. Then I was scared of my 40th, and I was like, oh, it's my favorite birthday. So now I'm older than 40, and that's all we need to know. So we're good.
Totally. My mom had 7 kids, and she immigrated from Paraguay here when we had all 7 kids under 10 years old. Oh, wow. And so for her, when she turned 30, she was in this whole new world of I don't know how to survive life or whatever. And so for her, she wanted very much for us girls and her family to celebrate getting older. And so our 30th, we started this tradition, my oldest sister, of you get to pick a place where you want to go and us girls are going to go. And so we started doing New York trips regularly. It's such a, so that's something that I want to definitely be passing on, right? I think it's something instead of something to fear, we should be celebrating these things. It's a milestone, whether you want it or not, it's coming. So let's enjoy it.
Exactly. Let's enjoy it. And how do I get on these New York trips?
You're one of us. You're one of the big chicks. You're fine. Excellent. You're fine.
Sounds good.
You're fine.
It'd be just all chaos, right? That's all.
Totally.
That's all it would be anyway. Good. Wonderful. Well, Karina, you sit on the city council. You said you sit on the city council. Tell me a little bit of how you decided to go that avenue.
Yeah. That was a discussion in our household for years. Okay. I considered running the term before, And it was just, my family wasn't ready, right? Like, to sacrifice that time from your family in order to pour into it, that was a big decision. So at that time we weren't ready, and we are nervous. We're still nervous, I think, of committing to it. But there were gaps that I had seen, and I felt that it was my duty to do something about it, right? Instead of just complaining about it, I'm one of those that, then what are you doing about it? If you want to complain, what are you doing about it? So
exactly,
that was my jump.
Oh, that makes sense. Absolutely. That is, I see that. And that would be a very big commitment. So
yeah, it is.
Sure. Okay. There we go. That's much better. Do you see that?
Oh, I ordered yesterday one of those ring lights. My son was doing something.
It's so funny because all of my lights just went out at the same time. So I texted my husband. It was like, hurry, help, lights out.
Get going.
And this is the beauty of like working from home.
Totally,
like,
I understand it.
That's exactly what it is, right? So it's perfect. Good. Anyway, sorry if I was a little distant there for a second. I was like, no.
I get it, man.
City Council, I can see that. You're the only woman on City Council, right?
I am. Yes, the first one in 20 years. Yep.
In 20 years. Wow. Yep. So tell me a little bit, how does that feel to be a female voice, to be in there as a different thought process and things like that?
You know, I really, that is something that we learn as we go, and I think we're all learning it. There's just different challenges for a female, and so it's something that at first I didn't think it would be that big of a difference, because I have no problem being the only woman in the room, no problem. But there's a lot of things that come with this. So, for example, something that we have learned along the way is, people feel, I don't know if this is normal for others, I just know for myself what I've gone through, right? So people feel more comfortable texting me with emotional questions, emotional issues and things like that. And so I do get a lot more questions and requests and that kind of, and complaints and whatever, right? Like I do get more of that, and simply because I am a female, and that's okay. It is okay. Like, I think that we, so people just feel that being the only female, that I'm more compassionate, that I'm more that I'm more open to that. And so that's an interesting piece of it all. But yeah,
that would be. And then you in turn bring that to the council. So you're bringing all of that emotion that other people are texting you and things like that coming with that. So that is definitely a learning curve.
Yeah. And then things like going on our city council conferences and stuff like that. I don't know if they've ever had a kid join with them, but that was something I was doing because my husband is not a traveler for me, or to come with business trips and stuff like that. So I brought my kids with instead of the wife, right? Or the husband. So that was another piece of it, right? So there's so many different pieces of it. So that's not necessarily specific to being a female, but it is specific to just being a mom on council, right? So
definitely, absolutely. And that would be part of it, right? Because that is such a huge part of your life. That is what it is. So absolutely. I can see that for sure. And do you think, like, is there something that you can kind of say, there's a challenge that I've really overcome by being on the council as a female, something that you've had to kind of like jump over or, work through, anything like that comes to mind? Like
100%. I'm a loudmouth. I'm a loudmouth. Like I am like, anyways, I have learned to, and I think coming on council was my first step in this pandemic, was just the sink or swim kind of a moment. But I think there is such a time where we learn to actively listen rather than speak, right? And so I've learned very much so to more so listen, and I see the bigger picture now. And one of the things that I wish people would understand is, and I didn't understand until I was in this position either, was that there's so much information out there, and the people that are in positions of leadership, they usually have more information than we do. And so it's important to ask those questions, right? And to understand that it's a lot, but yeah.
Yes, definitely. I can see that. That would be a hard job for me as well, because that's exactly how I would feel too.
Yeah, and removing your emotion out of it, right? Like that's such a, I think that comes with time, and that comes with our maturity, right? And so that's definitely something that I've definitely had to work with, is removing the emotion of it. When people are hurting, I want to protect them, and I want to jump in, and I get very passionate and emotional. I'm the mom, right? Like, and so I have to be conscious of that. Yeah.
For sure. And that plays itself a really good role in the jobs that you do, right? So it does play a wonderful role in that. You can actually be that person, that advocate for them, right? So, but it definitely does have a place and a time. And sometimes in a space where a lot of men are, I'm not saying that men are not emotional, but some of them, they can kind of separate it, I think, a little easier than I can. So, as in my own opinion, right? So, but you do work with a bunch of really great people on the council. So,
and that's why I say, like, it's a learning thing for all of us. Like they are very open to it, and they're very supportive and encouraging of it all, right? Like, it's just a matter of us all learning this together. And things like 7 a.m. meetings prior to it being all virtual. I'm sitting there texting kids to make sure the teenagers are waking up in my house, right? Like, that's part of the job, right? Like, I still have to make sure that kids are getting to school, right?
That's right, exactly. And especially if you've got teenagers, right? So that's exactly right. I have a 22-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So I've been through this stage, and then I'm going to do that again. So that'll be
seriously, girl.
That'll be fun.
Kudos to you.
Oh, thanks. I wouldn't say too many kudos till you meet my kids. So that's about it.
I feel that. I hear that. Absolutely. I hear that.
Good. So, Karina, with your job, you said you work for innkeepers.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, so you do the sales and marketing side of innkeepers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that is definitely something that I have learned an awful lot from. I used to work at Golden West Broadcasting, and so I used to sell advertising, and that's where I kind of got connected into innkeepers. I sold them advertising for their quality and location here in Winkler.
Okay.
And they offered me the position, and very interesting dynamics. Like, every municipality, every city is so unique. And so what I walked into thinking, at that time, we only owned 4 hotels. We thought that industry is industry, right? So marketing to that industry would be one thing, but it's so unique in the fact that every hotel has to market specific to that city and that their market. Every hotel is different, and it's so interesting. I thought prior to that's something that I've learned, is that every industry it's not just overall, right? You can't blanket one plan for everything overall, because every city is different. So I consider myself so blessed to be able to work in so many different municipalities and cities. I get to see so much out of it, right? Like, it's very interesting.
For sure. I would never have thought about that. You're right, because every single community is so very different.
Totally.
So even if there's a hotel there, that is a very different community that you would have to live in. So that, I'm sure, is a big learning curve.
Absolutely. And then working with the corporate accounts, right? So I work with all of the companies that come and stay at our properties and so on. So I work with companies worldwide. And then on top of that, you're working with the franchises for all the legalities of it all. And then you're dealing with the people that are just wanting to stay for the night, it's all very interesting. It's very different. There's lots of different avenues with it, but yeah.
For sure. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. And when we come back, I'd like to hear how you kind of learn about those communities and how you kind of figure out how to market in those communities. All right? Okay, we'll see you in a couple seconds.
Sounds good.
right, welcome back, guys. So Karina, we were talking just before the break, we were talking about your marketing in different communities and that every community is a little different. Can you tell me how you learn that kind of stuff?
Experience, time,
Yeah.
everything.
I'll
I
bet.
think that's the big key of it. I worked prior to COVID. I worked in Winnipeg at least once a week, and I traveled to Steinbach every other week, and like in Edmonton, I was traveling to more often. So I think it's a matter of being there and seeing with your own eyes, right? And seeing what the needs are and so on. So yeah.
Right. And that would help you kind of get in that space, right? So, I mean, anybody who's lived anywhere other than Winkler, like I'm talking to a lot of people here, we're talking Pembina Valley, but I mean, going from Winkler to Morden is a very different community. So even though we're so close together and we intermingle so much stuff, we still have a completely different community.
Absolutely.
So, do you have an example at all for me? Like something you could kind of tangibly tell me how that works in one community versus another?
There's so many. I mean, Winnipeg, like, so through this pandemic, local shop local has been a huge push, right? And like collaborating with other businesses and stuff like that. Yeah. That works in Winkler more than it does in most cities, right? And so Winkler is so community oriented, and so like there's so much more community spirit to everything here, and like I am connected in all those other cities, but not to the extent like I am here. And so it's been very interesting to see the difference. And so when I say we have a very unique community, we have a very unique community. I think that people sometimes take that for granted, right? We don't realize what we have, right? And so, we have a very sweet community that way.
We really do. And that you're absolutely right that it does work better sometimes with one community than another, for sure. So. Totally. Absolutely. Totally. And Winkler people, I think Winkler businesses and stuff are very minded, community minded for that part. Exactly what you're saying. So.
Absolutely. And they all take care of each other. Like this whole project right now coming through with the Winkler Chamber and the businesses and the city, like it's just mind blowing. Like what other community do businesses come together and say, hey, how can we help? Right? Like we're very fortunate.
Yes. And it is really wonderful to hear about that. So, and we did talk about that on the morning show. So people can go back and watch it, where the morning show with your description in it. So that's perfect. They can go and see that and hear a little bit more about it too. So that's exciting. So, okay. So you're working from home. I work from home for the most part here as well. But tell me a little bit about like, what does your day look like? A day in the life of Karina working from home. How do you structure things? How do you do things? What does it look like for you?
I wake up at 6 almost every morning, except for the weekends usually. I wake up at 6. I have an hour of devotion and prayer, and I enjoy my mate, and I do that for an hour. And then at 7, we start the whole process of whether the kids are going to school. I get that going, or else I have meetings, or I often have virtual meetings about once or twice a week at 7 a.m. And so for council committees, and then I do yoga and I shower. And then I start my day, right? And then I start my day virtually. So and then I do that till about 5-ish, and I don't know. Every day is different right now. It just feels like it's all flowing. Like I said, there's no boundaries. There's no, like last night I was on the computer working for 2 hours in the evening, right? There's just no. But then I was making empanadas during the day. It's such a different world. Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. And do you find that when you're working at home that you have a hard time kind of saying, I need to quit working, or I need to kind of transition, or is that easy for you?
I have actually found it easier since being home. Yeah, because when I was in the office, then I felt very much like I need to sit here for 8 hours, but my job is so intrusive of my life. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's so intertwined with my life, so that I would still do things in the evenings and weekends, but I would feel obligated to sit there for 8 hours to work for 8 hours straight, and then still take on that evening and weekend role, right? And so I feel like being at home now, I can just kind of blend it a little bit better and be like, the empanadas still need to be made, so I'm going to do that now, right? And it just flows. Just go with it. Yeah,
exactly.
But there are certain pieces of my day that I stay consistent of because of my mental health. I make sure that for my mental health, in order to to set myself up in order to be positive and handle everything. There are certain pieces of that I need to that have to happen no matter what. And so I'm very serious about those things. And I think that's important.
Absolutely it is. And I think that mental health, especially from working from home, a lot of people, it's underrated. We don't talk about it enough. We don't look at it enough because people are like, well, like me, for instance, if my kids wake me up at 6 o'clock, then I'm just going. Then I'm just going for the day. I don't have any routine then. Once they're up, it's like now everything kind of revolves around them. Totally. And then your mental health does suffer, especially working at home. So
for sure.
I do know that it is very important for me to take that time and to make sure that I have time for self-care and take time for my mental health. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think a lot of times we neglect to think about that, right?
Absolutely. So absolutely. Yeah. And when we're I think that through this pandemic, people we go in and out of survival mode.
Yes.
And we need to be very conscious and intentional about our mental health through that, because if you're in survival mode for too long, that's where you struggle with burnout, and that's where you face those walls, right? And you need to be very conscious and very aware and intentional about that, and making sure that you are setting yourself up, right? That's a big piece of it. And nobody's going to do it but you. Nobody's going to do it for you. So that's the problem. That's the responsibility of being a human being. You got to take care of that, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So, and that's really great tip, because a lot of us entrepreneurs and everybody else, they work from home. So we're working from home. We're doing that all the time. Like you said, sometimes I work on the computer late at night when the kids are asleep, or I work on it, right after supper and Mike's cleaning up the dishes or whatever like that. There are certain times where my life is totally intertwined with everything else. So I've always had a problem saying I work at this time, and this time, and then I do this and that, the other thing. So it's all kind of flowing. And you're right, from home, it can become very easily like that. But I do have a hard time saying, okay, I'm done working now and I'll go do whatever, for the kids. I've got to stop now and I got to go do whatever I need to do, make supper or even shower or things like that. It's like, no, but I have to do it. So it is something that I definitely work on.
Totally. I think we all do.
What would you say is what would you say is something you would like any woman who wants to start a business? So any woman who wants to start a business, anything like that, what would you tell them to do or to try or anything like that? What would be your tip for them?
So great opportunity to talk about. I'm going to launch a business in the next week or two. I'm not giving details. It'll come out shortly.
Okay.
But it is happening. And so my mom, I grew up with a mom who owned her own business and founded her own business on our kitchen table. And so I've had that pleasure of being able to sit at that table and watch those dynamics. And I learned an awful lot growing up with that. And I think the biggest challenge would be, or the biggest tip that I would give would be, number one, have grace on yourself.
Yes.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Good. Yes.
That's a tough one, because we have grace for other people. Most people have grace for other people more and more, but we need to have grace on ourselves. And so when we struggle, when we fail, or whatever you want to call it, right? We need to have grace on ourselves to pick ourselves back up, right? Like, we are human as well. And so we won't be able to do everything that we want to do. We can't do it all, right? And so when we do try to do it all, we usually end up failing. And so I think it's important for multitaskers, and usually that's women, more so, I should say. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's important for us to remember that when we're giving to one thing, we're sacrificing from the others, and we need to be aware of that, right? Yeah. And so when I'm choosing to do the dishes, I'm choosing to walk away from my business. And so, and when I'm choosing to focus on the business, I'm choosing to step away from the kids, right? And so it has to be an intentional thought. And so we need to be intentional about our priorities and what we want out of life, and vision, like have a vision of what do you want, who do you want to be in life? Like, what are your priorities, right? I've failed my kids many times. I pray every day for God to fill in the gaps of where I have failed. And so that is something that I've become more and more aware of, is the intentionality of what are my priorities? Well, who do I want to be?
I learned that a few years ago, actually, probably I'd say about 6 or 7 years ago, because I'm a yes man. I will do what you need me to do and when you need me to do it. I'm here for it. If that is my role to play, and even if it's outside of my role, I will do it.
Yep.
And so I have learned the power of choosing. When I say yes to something, I'm saying no to something else. And so that is exactly what I realized that. So that's a really great tip, because not everybody has the opportunity to learn that. But I mean, it took me into my 30s till I actually realized how to do that. But I mean, when I first started saying no to people, it was like, no. I said no. Oh my gosh. I said no. And they're offended because I said no.
I know. Yes. Totally. Isn't there a book called The Power of No or something like that?
I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, there is. So yeah.
It's good. Like I've heard it through audiobook or whatever. So good. So good.
It's so many years ago, I don't even remember exactly.
I know, totally.
But yes. And so now I'm like, oh, I got to go find it. I'll have to find the book and be like, yes. But yes, it is totally a thing. And it's a mindset shift.
Yes.
It's a mindset shift that you can't do everything. You can't be everything to everyone. And especially when you're a woman in the business world, because you do have to stand up and say, look, this is what I stand for. This is what I'm going for. This is what I'm not, kind of thing.
That's exactly it.
That is. Totally. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a really great tip. I'm really excited to hear about your new business. So that is very good. That's wonderful. I love hearing about things like that. So that's good. Okay, so is there anything else you want to talk to us about? You know, we talked about your tips for women in business. Is there anything else that you want to talk to us about, like how to juggle mom life and work life at home, or anything that you can think of that would be valuable to a woman who is working from home or thinking about starting a business at home? Like, we've got our tips here about grace and giving yourself grace, which is huge because we're so hard on ourselves. But is there anything else you think you want to talk about for that?
You know, I'll be honest, I struggle with this feminist movement. I struggle with when I was running for council, how every first question from media or from anybody was about my gender. And I couldn't, it was so frustrating to me, because to me, if you're talking about my gender, then you're distracting information from the value of what I'm bringing to the table. And so it's more than just my gender. And so if you're asking me about my gender, then I'm expecting you to ask the gentleman beside me about about their gender as well, right? And so I feel like that's been a big struggle for me to get over, right? But I do see the commonality of the issues and the struggles for females in politics as well as in business. And so it's definitely something that we need to be advocating for. And I think that there's huge power in community. And so I love that there are so many more women groups coming up where they're supporting each other. And this whole comparing ourselves to others, that's got to stop. And that's like, I'm really bad for it. And that's something that I'm working on. But it's something that I think a lot of women struggle with, is we compare ourselves to the next female, right? And we have to remember and remind ourselves that we all live through different seasons of life. I struggled in my 20s. Other people thrived in their 20s, right? Like there's so many different seasons of life, right? Like, and so we have to have that grace on ourselves for that, to understand that their successful season of life, I shouldn't compare to my rock bottom, right? So, yeah.
And, you know, social media makes it really easy for us to compare. Totally easy for us to compare. So
I am going to say it. I'm going to say it.
Do it.
If you are not putting out positivity on social media, get off. Like, I cannot anymore. Like, what does it help? What does it help? I just, anyways, that's my rant. I'm going to stop right there.
Thank you. And that's how I feel too. I'm an uplifting person. I'm an encourager. I'm that kind of thing. That's exactly it. So the negativity gets me down or gets you blocked. So
there you go. There you go.
All the way. It's all the way. So that's exactly right. But you're right. We need to stop putting that out there. And the other thing that social media does is we see other people's highlight reels.
Totally.
We see their highlight reel. We don't see the struggle behind the scenes. So I have intentionally posted things like days of me crying, days of me having horrible days, throwing in the towel, proverbially throwing in the towel for my business and things like that. Because for me, it's like, you know, I'm done. But I always see everybody's, you know, highlight reel. And I want to be the person who is actually real. So
totally genuine, right?
That's how it is.
Totally, be genuine. That's definitely a big piece of it. That's definitely big.
And that helps for people to understand that, you know, because it looks like you're successful in one area, there has been so much struggle and it hasn't come easy and that kind of thing. So comparison is the thief of joy, 100%. And it also makes you feel like you're unsuccessful or a failure.
Totally. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
And that is my goal with the Women in Business show, is to uplift, to make sure people are encouraged, to make sure that they know they can do anything they put their mind to, and to create a community of people, of women who want to help support others. So awesome. That's exactly what this is. So thank you for joining me here today. I have had like the most wonderful times. It's been such a pleasure. Where can people find you? Where can they hook up with you?
On social media.
Isn't that like the best line right there? Okay, well, that's it. Camera's off. It's true, right? It is true. It's our connection right there. It is true. Facebook, Instagram. That's wonderful.
That's it.
Absolutely. So, and we do have your website running across the bottom as well, KarinaBueckert.com. Is that where we're going to be able to find out about your new business as well?
Yes, awesome. I'll launch on there.
I'll be stalking that. So that sounds wonderful. All right, awesome. Karina, thank you so very much. It's been such a pleasure, for real.
Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for advocating for women. Thank you.
You betcha. And we will talk to you again soon sometime.
Sounds great.
All right. Bye.